My name is Thomas Barnes. I'm not a perfect man, but I've always tried to be a good one. Steadfast, loyal, dependable. For more than 20 years, I built a life with the woman I thought I'd grow old with. We raised children, paid off a house, survived hard years, and shared quiet Sunday mornings that felt like home. I truly believed we were solid. That belief shattered on a Wednesday evening. I came home from work to find Elaine, my wife, standing in front of the mirror in the hallway. She was wearing a black dress I hadn't seen in years, the kind of thing she used to wear to holiday parties when we were younger. Her perfume, Chanel No. 5, lingered thick in the air. That scent used to drive me wild. Now it made my stomach turn. "You're dressed up," I said, setting my keys in the dish like always. She barely glanced at me. "I'm going out." "With who?" "Just a friend from work." I paused, watching her tighten an earring with steady fingers. "What's his name?" "It doesn't matter." That silence between us stretched like a tightrope. I looked at the woman I had shared my life with, and for the first time, she felt like a stranger. "I won't be here when you get back," I said. She turned sharply. "What? You said you'd tell me everything when you returned. But I won't be here to hear it." Her expression flickered. Not guilt, not shame, just annoyance. "You're being ridiculous." "No, I'm being honest. Something you should try." She stepped closer, folding her arms. "Thomas, this isn't the 1950s. People open their marriages all the time. It's the 21st century. We're adults. This doesn't mean I love you any less. But it does mean you respect me less." "That's not true." "It is. You made a choice without me. You planned this. You dressed up, put on that perfume, my favorite, and walked out the door like I'm supposed to just accept it." Her tone hardened. "I didn't cheat on you, Thomas. I'm just meeting someone for dinner. Someone you didn't name. Someone you lied about to our daughter." That stopped her. "I talked to Emma," I said. "She called while I was sitting in her living room, confused and crying because her mother said she was with me tonight. You didn't just lie to me. You dragged her into it." Elaine tried to recover, but the damage was done. She looked away, her hands clenched at her sides. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "I don't think I am," I said. "Because I know what this is. You're bored. You want excitement. You think a fling will wake you up, make you feel 25 again. And you wouldn't understand," she snapped. "Don't you ever feel like we're just going through the motions? Day after day, same routine, same faces, same conversations." "Yes, I do," I admitted. "But I don't go chasing strangers to feel alive again. I work through it, with you." She shook her head. "You never listen. You never see how I'm feeling until it explodes like this. Because you never say anything until it's too late." I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack, my keys from the dish. "Tell Emma whatever you want," I said, walking toward the door. "But don't use my name to cover your lies again." "Thomas," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, we can talk about this. When I get home, I'll explain everything." "No," I said without turning back. "I'm done listening." I opened the door. Cold air hit me like a wall. Elaine followed me out onto the porch, barefoot, still clinging to whatever script she had rehearsed in her head. "This doesn't change how I feel about you," she insisted. "But it changes how I feel about you," I said. "And that's the part you never thought about." I walked down the steps. She stood there, watching, saying my name one more time like it would undo the evening. It didn't. I didn't look back. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt most. It was the calm in her voice while she did it. Like I was already gone. Like she'd practiced living without me, and this was just the final scene. So I left, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking away from my life. I felt like I was finally reclaiming it. I didn't drive far that night, just far enough to clear my head. The only place that made sense to go was Emma's. I parked outside her apartment and sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to decide what I'd even say. Eventually, I knocked on her door. She opened it in one of my old sweatshirts, hair in a messy bun, holding a half-eaten bowl of cereal. "Dad?" she said, surprised. "What's wrong?" I stepped inside without answering. Max, her oversized golden retriever, came charging toward me like I was a celebrity. I gave him a pat, sat down, and stared at the floor. For a minute, she didn't ask anything. She just waited. Then I said it. "Your mother told me she was going on a date. With someone from work." Emma blinked like she misheard. "Wait, what?" She got dressed up. Makeup, perfume, the whole thing. Told me not to worry, that she still loves me. Said it didn't change anything. I let out a bitter laugh. She even said I could go on dates too. Emma didn't speak. She just stared at me, wide-eyed. Then she slowly put down her cereal, picked up her phone, and started dialing. Emma, I said. Don't. But she already had the phone to her ear. Where are you? She said. No. I know you said you're out. I'm asking where exactly. Her face changed. The anger spread across it like wildfire. You're with who? Really? Because Dad's sitting right here. So try again. She hung up and threw her phone onto the couch. Her hands were shaking. She said she was with you, she whispered. She said the two of you were having dinner together. She lied to my face. I know, I said. Emma stood up and started pacing. What the hell is going on with her? Does she seriously think this is okay? Did she really think you'd just sit there and wait for her to come home from a date with some guy? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. I'm calling Sophie. She didn't wait for me to approve. She just hit call and said, you need to come here. Now. It's Mom. Sophie showed up 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes, heels clicking against the hardwood. She looked between the two of us and asked what happened. Emma told her everything. Fast, blunt, emotional. Sophie sat down, expression frozen. She said nothing for a while, just stared at the floor like she was trying to process a new reality. She said it that casually, she finally asked. No warning, no discussion. Just, hey, I'm dating now. I nodded. And you left? Yes. Good, she said quietly. That's what I would have done. Emma looked at her. That's it. You're not angry. I'm furious, Sophie said. But right now I'm more sad than anything. It's like the mom we knew is gone, and someone else took her place. I didn't want to speak. Hearing my daughters talk like that about their mother made me feel sick. I never wanted this to touch them. I thought I could shield them from it. Keep the mess between Elaine and me. But it was too late for that. We sat together for hours, talking, venting, going over every memory that suddenly looked different in hindsight. Emma cried once. Sophie didn't, but I could see it in her eyes. She was holding it all in, barely. At some point, Emma asked me if I was going to fight for the marriage. I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because I did. And saying it out loud felt too final. Everything felt heavy, like we were all carrying a piece of something broken and none of us knew where to set it down. I stayed the night on Emma's couch. Didn't sleep much. Max curled up beside me, sensing something was wrong. In the quiet, with both girls in the other room, I realized this wasn't just my heartbreak anymore. Elaine hadn't just left me behind. She'd left all of us behind, whether she knew it or not. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the soft murmur of my daughters talking in the kitchen. Emma gave me a tired smile as I sat up. Max still sprawled across my feet like a living blanket. I felt stiff, physically and emotionally. Sophie handed me a mug without saying anything. We all knew the silence was temporary. It wouldn't last. After breakfast, they both pressed me about what I planned to do next. I told them I didn't know yet, and it wasn't a lie. I was still too raw, too full of questions, too angry to make a decision I wouldn't regret later. But one thing was certain. I couldn't let this hang in the air any longer. I had to confront Elaine. By late afternoon, I drove back to the house. Her car was in the garage. I sat in the driveway for a few minutes, gathering myself. My heart was racing, my palms were sweaty, and I had to remind myself that this was still my home. I had every right to walk through that door. When I stepped inside, the lights were low, and the only sound was the soft clink of glass coming from the kitchen. She was pouring herself a drink. Wine, from the look of it. She turned when she saw me, surprised, but not startled. You came back, she said, as if I'd just returned from a grocery run. I'm not here to stay, I said. We need to talk. Then sit, she said, gesturing toward the living room. I didn't. I stood by the edge of the doorway, arms crossed. No games. No charm. Just honesty. She took a sip of her wine. I told you the truth, didn't I? You told me a truth, I snapped. Not the truth. You made a decision about our marriage, our life, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me until you were halfway out the door in heels. Elaine sighed, setting the glass down. I was going to explain everything when I got back. I wasn't going to be here when you got back. That's the part you don't seem to get. Her voice faltered. I needed something different. Something new. I feel stuck. Like I've been living the same day over and over. You wanted excitement. Fine. But you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to chase thrills and still expect me to hold this house together like nothing happened. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. And you lied to Emma. She called you while I was sitting right next to her. You told her you were with me. You dragged her into your lie without hesitation. She looked away, guilt flickering across her face. I panicked. No, you planned this. You planned everything. The date, the cover story. The only thing you didn't plan on was getting caught. I thought we could try something different, she said, her voice quieter now. Open things up. See other people. Explore. And still come home to each other. That's not a marriage. That's a negotiation between two people afraid to walk away. She didn't reply, just stared at her glass like the answers were swirling at the bottom. You told me you still love me, I said. But I think what you love is comfort. Stability. Knowing someone's always here while you go chase whatever fantasy you've been building in your head. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't offer comfort. Not this time. I miss how things used to feel, she whispered. When we were younger. When every day felt full of possibilities. So do I. But we're not 25 anymore. Love changes. It deepens, it matures. It doesn't disappear just because life slows down. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought I'd always be the one who swallowed his pride, who let things slide for the sake of keeping peace. But not this time. I can't be the man who waits at home while his wife explores other men, I said. That's not who I am. And it sure as hell isn't who I want to become. What are you saying? She asked. I'm saying if this is the road you want to take, you'll be walking it alone. I turned and headed for the basement. Packed a week's worth of clothes in silence. She stood in the hallway, watching, saying nothing. When I walked out to the truck, she followed, tried the passenger door. It was locked. I didn't look at her as I drove away. I felt like half of me had just been cut away. But the other half, the part that still believed in self-respect, was finally breathing again. I stayed at the lake house that week. Alone. The silence was heavy at first, too heavy. Every corner reminded me of her. Every cup, every drawer, every damned throw pillow she insisted on buying. I should have felt relieved to be out of the chaos, but all I felt was hollow. The girls checked in constantly. Emma dropped by with groceries, pretending it was just an excuse to see Max, who had now claimed my bed. Sophie called every night, her voice a little more controlled, a little more clipped than Emma's. She never asked how I was doing, just gave updates, asked what I needed, then hung up. That was her way of caring, efficient and quiet. Elaine texted me 3 times that week. The first was short. Can we talk? I didn't answer. The second came 2 days later. I miss you. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. The third one arrived late on Friday night, long after midnight. I made a mistake. Please come home. That one made me pause. Not because I believed her, but because for a split second, I wanted to. I wanted to believe that this was all some impulsive phase. That she'd wake up, apologize, and mean it. That we could rewind the last week and go back to dinners on the porch, or lazy Sunday mornings with the newspaper and coffee. But we were long past that. I didn't respond. The following Monday, I called a lawyer. A no-fault divorce, he explained. Simple. No drama unless someone wanted to start it. We owned separate businesses. Separate pensions. The house in town was hers by default. She loved it. I hated it. The lake house was mine, and I wanted to keep it. That was the only thing I was willing to fight for. She didn't contest it. That surprised me. What didn't surprise me was her sudden shift in tone once the paperwork was served. She called me from a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of curiosity, not hope. This is going too far, Thomas, she said. Divorce? Really? You're the one who walked out emotionally, Elaine. I just followed with the paperwork. I didn't want this. No, you wanted freedom and a husband. You don't get both. What are you going to tell people? She snapped. What are you going to tell the girls? The truth. That we disagreed on what marriage meant. And I refused to be a footnote in your story. She didn't like that. She hung up. I spent the next few weeks in limbo, waiting for court dates, signing documents, dividing assets with the cold efficiency of two people who used to share a life and now barely shared eye contact. She stopped trying to talk to me after a while. Maybe she realized I meant what I said. Maybe the silence finally spoke louder than her apologies. When it was over, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry either. I just sat out on the dock, staring at the water, wondering how long it would take to feel whole again. I poured myself into distractions. Fixed up the boat. Replaced the fence. Took long drives without direction. Sometimes I'd fish. Sometimes I'd sit in the boat for hours without touching the rod. Emma and Sophie visited often. Emma brought Max, who now followed me everywhere like a shadow. Sophie sometimes stayed the night, but always left early in the morning like she was afraid of getting too comfortable in the new normal. One night, after a quiet dinner, Sophie asked me if I was angry. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I said. Now? I think I'm just tired. She nodded. Do you still love her? I don't know what I feel anymore. I miss who she was. I don't miss who she became. That seemed to satisfy her. She didn't press further. Eventually, I started looking at life through a different lens. I was 50, healthy, had 2 daughters I adored, and a house by the water. I didn't need much more. So I made a decision. I sold my business. I bought a bigger boat. And for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to ask a dangerous question. What do I want? Not what does the marriage need, or what does she want, or what do the kids expect of me? Just me. And for once, I didn't feel selfish asking it. I felt free. It started with a dinner invitation. I had been going to the same small lakeside restaurant for months. Just good food, familiar faces, and no pressure to talk. The owner, Tomas, knew my story. Everyone around here eventually did. I never confirmed the rumors, but I didn't deny them either. People assumed what they wanted, and I let them. One Friday night, Tomas approached my table with 2 glasses of sangria and an awkward smile. Mind if someone joins you tonight? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. Are you setting me up, Tomas? He just grinned and nodded toward the kitchen. That's when I saw her. She stepped out of the back wearing a yellow dress that shimmered under the string lights. Her skin glowed with warmth, and her long dark curls fell over one shoulder like she'd just walked off a movie set. But what struck me most wasn't her looks. It was her presence. Calm, confident, almost regal. Like she was completely at ease with herself. This is Nia, Tomas said. She's a friend. Nia extended her hand. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Barnes. Just Barnes, I replied, standing up. Please, have a seat. She had a voice like slow jazz, low, smooth, with just a hint of an accent. Her English was perfect, her laugh rich and unfiltered. Within minutes, I'd forgotten what loneliness felt like. She asked questions, not out of politeness, but genuine interest. She didn't flinch when I mentioned I was recently divorced. She didn't pry, just nodded, and said, sometimes freedom comes wearing hard shoes. When I asked what she did, she smiled and said she ran a pharmaceutical company. Legally, she added, with a wink. I laughed harder than I had in months. As the night wore on, I found myself watching the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her daughter. Pia, she said. She's 13 going on 30, and the joy of my life. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures, sun-drenched shots of them horseback riding, cooking, playing board games. There was a closeness in those photos I hadn't seen in years, not even in my own family before everything fell apart. She asked about Emma and Sophie. I told her the truth. About the fallout, the pain, the resentment. And then I told her how they stood by me. How, despite everything, they never once made me feel like less of a father. Her eyes softened, and she touched my hand gently. You must be a good man, she said. I didn't know what to say. I didn't feel like one. Not yet. We parted that night with nothing more than a handshake and a promise to meet again. But something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other more often. At first, it was just coffee, long walks, dinners when schedules aligned. Then came the boat rides. The evenings spent watching sunsets from the dock. The quiet conversations about love, loss, regret. Eventually, she invited me to her home. That's when I met Pia. She was cautious at first, observant, the kind of kid who doesn't waste words. She shook my hand, introduced herself in 3 languages, and then asked what I did for a living. When I told her I was retired, she raised an eyebrow. So you just fish and take naps? Pretty much, I replied. She smirked. Nice work if you can get it. I liked her immediately. The more time I spent with them, the more I felt the walls around me crumbling. Nia didn't rush anything. She let things unfold. She wasn't trying to fill a hole or fix me. She just showed up, fully herself, and let me do the same. One weekend, I invited them both to the lake house. Pia brought her books, Nia brought wine, and I grilled until the stars came out. We sat by the fire pit, wrapped in blankets, laughing about nothing. Pia fell asleep against Nia's shoulder, and I remember thinking, this feels right. Not like a distraction, not like a rebound, like the beginning of something real. That night, Nia leaned over and whispered, I haven't felt this peaceful in years. Me neither, I said. And I meant it. Not long after, Emma came over for dinner. She took one look at Nia and Pia and pulled me into the kitchen. Dad, she said, lowering her voice, are you dating her? I think so. She paused, then smiled. Good. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like a backup plan. Sophie took longer to warm up. She was cautious, protective, but eventually, even she admitted Nia was good for me. She doesn't try too hard, she said. I like that. Life didn't go back to what it was. It became something new, something better. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living again. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when the thought hit me. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. We were sitting on the deck at the lake house. Nia was curled up beside me with a book. Pia was down by the water skipping stones, and the air smelled like sun-warmed pine and river mist. There was no big moment, no dramatic epiphany, just a steady, undeniable truth settling into my bones. I loved her, not the way I used to love Elaine, with all the desperate hope of youth and the blind assumption that love alone was enough. No, this was different. This was the kind of love that had walked through fire, survived betrayal, and still found the courage to reach for something new. I started planning that evening. I didn't want a big, flashy proposal. I didn't want an audience. I just wanted something honest, intimate. Us. Emma helped me find the ring, an oval fire opal ring with small diamonds surrounding the stone like tiny suns. It was Nia's favorite. Pia had mentioned it once without realizing it, while talking about the birthstone chart on her bedroom wall. You're going to make her cry, Emma said as I paid the jeweler. I hope so, I said. The good kind. We waited for the ring to be finished. 2 long weeks. In the meantime, I arranged a picnic at the river gazebo behind Nia's property, where we'd first watched the stars together months ago. Pia and Beck helped distract her while I packed the cooler, chilled the wine, and rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head. When we got there, the sun was low and golden. The breeze was soft, and Pia, grinning like a co-conspirator, took off down the trail with a, I'm going to go feed the ducks. Nia raised an eyebrow. She hates ducks. She's growing, I said, smiling. Trying new things. She laughed and sat down on the blanket I'd laid out. We had fruit, cheese, and her favorite wine. She leaned into me, barefoot, relaxed, unsuspecting. It almost felt unfair, how completely she trusted me. So I told her the truth. Nia, I said, taking her hand, you asked me once if I believed in second chances. She looked at me, puzzled, but nodded. I didn't. Not back then. I thought love was something you only got right once. And if you screwed it up, that was it. You lived with the wreckage. And now I know I was wrong. She didn't speak. She just watched me, her expression softening. I reached into the basket, pulled out the little box, and held it between us. I love you, I said. Not because you saved me. Not because you made the pain disappear. But because you made room for something better to grow in its place. You brought light into a place that had been dark for too long. Her hand flew to her mouth when I opened the box. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. I don't want to go another day wondering what this is or where it's going. I want to build a life with you, Nia. With you and Pia. I want to be your partner, your protector, your biggest fan. I took a breath. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes, she whispered, then threw her arms around me. Yes, yes, yes. The ring slipped onto her finger like it had been waiting for her all along. We held each other as the sun dipped below the horizon and the river turned to gold. Pia returned 10 minutes later, pretending to be surprised. She took one look at the ring and screamed, then jumped into my arms. I knew it. She cried too, and hugged me so tightly it hurt. I want you to be my real dad, she said. You already have me, I whispered back. That night, we had dinner with Emma and Sophie. When we told them, Emma burst into tears and tackled Nia in a hug. Sophie smiled and nodded. I was waiting for this, she said. You're a different man with her. Better. Happier. And I was. The wedding wasn't extravagant. It was simple, warm, filled with laughter and the kind of quiet joy that doesn't need an audience. Nia wore gold. She said she'd worn white before, and this time she wanted something that felt like a new beginning. It was perfect. We moved in together after that. Kept the camper for vacations, but the lake house became our home. Pia claimed the guest room, then slowly took over the entire upstairs. Sometimes I'd wake up and think, this isn't real. It's too good to be true. But then I'd hear laughter downstairs. Smell pancakes. See Nia's bare feet padding across the floor. Feel Pia throw herself into a hug with zero warning. And I'd realize, this was my life now. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd last seen Elaine in person. Not since the court date. Not since I walked out of that building, free and finished, with her voice trailing behind me in the hallway, still trying to justify what she'd done. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. I had moved on. Built a new life. A better one. But that peace was shaken one gray December morning when Sophie called and asked, "Dad, can we talk?" I was sitting on the porch with Pia, sipping hot cider, watching the wind toss the last stubborn leaves off the trees. I told her to give me a minute and stepped inside. "She wants to visit," Sophie said. I didn't need to ask who she was. "For Christmas?" "Yes." My stomach tightened. "What do you want?" I asked her. "I want to spend the holiday here. With you, with Beck, with Pia and Nia. I love Mom, but it's hard being around her. It always feels like we're pretending everything's fine, and it's not." I sat in silence. I knew what she meant. Sophie loved her mother, but trust wasn't something that returned just because the calendar flipped. "She asked if she could see you," Sophie added, voice lower now. "Talk to you. Just once." The words landed like a punch I didn't see coming. "I don't know," I said. "I'll talk to Nia." That night, I sat with Nia by the fire and told her everything. Pia had gone to bed, and the house was wrapped in that soft, still quiet only winter brings. Nia didn't flinch. She listened, sipped her wine, and stared into the flames for a long time before speaking. "She's part of your past, and she's part of the girls' lives. I think it's time. You'd be okay with that?" "I wouldn't invite her to move in," she said with a smile. "But dinner? That I can handle." So we invited her. Elaine arrived the day before Christmas Eve. She stayed at Beck's cabin up the road. I didn't go out to meet her. I didn't have to. The girls took care of it. I didn't even ask how it went. I figured I'd find out soon enough. The next day, I was fixing part of the fence that had been blown down in a storm when Sophie came outside and told me Elaine wanted to see me. "She's waiting in the office," she said. I washed up, changed my shirt, and took a deep breath. When I stepped into the room, she stood. She looked thinner, paler. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, and she wore a quiet look I'd never seen on her before, like guilt had finally caught up with her. "Barnes," she said softly. I nodded. "You look well," she said. "You too." I lied. She didn't sit until I did. Then, slowly, she folded her hands in her lap. "I need to apologize," she said. "I know that word isn't enough, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was selfish, arrogant. I disrespected you and what we had. I hurt you and the girls, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope for it." I looked at her for a long time. This wasn't the woman who had tried to justify an open marriage, who had lied with ease and thrown our life together into the fire for a spark of excitement. This was someone else, someone older, humbled. "There were consequences," I said. "You didn't just lose me. You lost trust. With all of us." "I know." Her voice broke. "I'm trying to be better." I believed her. Or at least, I believed that she wanted to be. "I forgive you," I said. "But we're not going back. You need to know that." "I do. And you need to respect the life I have now. With Nia. With Pia. With the girls." "I understand." There was a long silence between us. Then Nia knocked softly and stepped into the room. "Dinner's ready," she said. Elaine stood, nodded, and followed us out. At the table, something unexpected happened. The air wasn't tense. It wasn't awkward. It was calm. Beck and Pia told stories. Emma made everyone laugh, and even Elaine smiled. Genuine, not forced. At one point, I caught Nia's eye across the table. She gave me a wink, a soft smile, and I felt something shift deep inside me. This wasn't forgiveness for Elaine. It wasn't even closure. It was something better. Peace. 2 days before Christmas, the river rose. Heavy rain rolled in overnight, and by morning the current was raging. I was already up, pacing the porch before sunrise, watching the water inch closer to the dock. Pia joined me with a blanket around her shoulders and Davy close behind, his tail wagging like he had no idea anything could go wrong. By mid-afternoon, we'd hauled the dock out of the water 3 times and repaired 2 sections of the fence. The girls helped where they could, and I paid a local laborer to assist me with the heavy lifting. Everyone worked together, laughing through the chaos, soaked and muddy, but there was something oddly beautiful about it. It felt like family. Real family. Not picture perfect, not scripted, but strong. We planned to eat it too. After I showered and changed, I stood in the kitchen watching the cider bubble on the stove. I heard laughter outside. Sophie and Pia, teasing each other like siblings. Davy barked once, then flopped across the floor with a satisfied grunt. When everyone started arriving, the house came alive. First came Beck, with a tray of cookies shaped like fish. Pia squealed in delight and stole 3 before they made it to the table. Then came Emma, holding a bottle of homemade spiced rum, and Sophie carrying a pan of roasted vegetables like it was the crown jewel of the feast. I poured drinks, kept the fire going, and let myself feel the weight of gratitude settle in. Then Elaine walked in. Not alone, Nia was beside her. I froze, cider ladle in hand. Nia glanced at me and gave the smallest shake of her head, her expression calm but serious. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My pulse kicked up just a little, but I forced myself to stay grounded. She didn't have anywhere to go, Nia said softly as she passed me, her voice low enough for only me to hear. I invited her. I nodded, but it took effort. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just surprised. I thought we were done with moments like this. I thought I had drawn the final line. But life, it seems, has a habit of redrawing boundaries you thought were permanent. Elaine and I ended up in the office again, not by demand, just by silent understanding. The door closed behind us, and we sat in the same chairs we'd occupied a year before when she'd first apologized. "You look happy," she said, trying to smile. "I am." She nodded. "I'm trying to be. Still figuring out how. I know it's not easy. I just wanted to say thank you for letting me come. I know I don't deserve it." "I didn't let you," I said gently. "Nia did." That made her pause. "She's an incredible woman." "She is." There was silence. Then she looked me in the eyes, really looked. And I saw it again. Not the woman who betrayed me, but the one who, once upon a time, stood beside me and built a life. "I'm glad it's her," she whispered. "I mean that." I nodded. "Me too." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't need to. That moment was enough. Honest. Quiet. Final. Back in the kitchen, the kids had already started without us. Pia ran up and grabbed my hand, dragging me to the table. Davy trailed behind, hoping someone would drop something. Beck had made her signature mashed potatoes, and Emma was pouring cider like it was gold. Sophie smiled from across the table, her eyes soft. Elaine sat beside Nia, and it wasn't awkward. It wasn't tense. It was peaceful. Pia said grace, her hands folded, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you for family, for forgiveness, and for this food." Amen. I looked around the table and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just joy, not just gratitude. Wholeness. Elaine had changed. Maybe not completely, but enough. Enough for the girls to see her again as a mother, not a stranger. Enough for Nia to offer her a seat at our table. And enough for me to release the last bit of bitterness still lodged somewhere in the corners of my chest. After dinner, Pia climbed into my lap, her arms wrapped tightly around my neck. "You're the best Christmas gift I've ever had," she whispered. "No," I said, my voice low. "That would be you." We sat by the fire while the others played board games. Nia leaned against my side, her hand in mine, her heart steady and safe. Outside, the river had calmed. The sky was clear. The storm had passed, and everything that mattered was right here. Looking back, I see now that the pain wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something deeper. Life doesn't always unfold the way we imagined in our younger years. Love changes. People change. And sometimes the ones we thought would walk beside us forever take a different road. But that doesn't mean the story ends. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Respect in a relationship is not optional. Once it's broken, love alone can't hold things together. Forgiveness is powerful, but it must be earned, not expected. To anyone my age who's facing loss, betrayal, or the ache of starting over, don't believe for a second that your best years are behind you. We're not finished. Not by a long shot. Give yourself permission to walk away from what no longer serves you. Surround yourself with people who bring peace, not confusion. And never think it's too late to find joy again. I didn't go looking for love. I just stayed open to life. And life, in return, gave me something even better than what I lost. Sometimes, the second chapter is where the Betrayal story begins.